I'm Dmitry Sitkovetsky, and this is Transformation, Art of Reinvention in the Times of the Pandemic. My new program, the first of this year. We have a wonderful guest, a really old and wonderful friend of mine, Iain Burnside, who's one of the foremost collaborative pianists in this country, as well as professor of the Guildhall of Music and also radio presenter. Hi, Iain. Happy New Year.
And to you, Dima, and to you.
Great. I've got a lot of questions already submitted for you. So let me start with this. You probably never spend as much time at home as in 2020. What new have you learned about yourself during the pandemic? What has been a positive lesson from being at home?
Oh, that's a very good question.
$1 million question, as they say. Yeah.
What good things have I learned from being at home?
Yeah, what good things? Let's start with good things, with positive things.
Yeah, okay. Well, I've learned that I can get by on a desert island if I have to, that I'm comfortable with my own company. I miss my friends very much. I miss traveling. There are, of course, downsides, but after the initial shock, I had a month which was very bad, and where I basically was like a vegetable. But then after that, I turned a corner and I re-engaged with the piano, and I loved playing and I loved practicing and I loved learning some new pieces. And I've just got on with it. And I'm very fortunate to have a little dog who gets me up in the morning, who makes sure that before I eat breakfast, I've walked for 25 minutes.
Great.
And I've got some air in my lungs. And really the biggest thing I've learned is to count my blessings. I have many, many blessings to count. I live in a nice house with my little dog. I've got enough money to live on. I'm not going to die of starvation. I've got very nice neighbors that we've interacted with in a socially distant way. And I've been able to keep in touch with friends and family. So I'm in a much more fortunate position, really through luck more than judgment, than many, and I give thanks for that. So I suppose the biggest thing I've learned is to be grateful.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great. I mean, there are some people, of course, most of our colleagues, of course, suffered from not being able to see each other, as you said. And the music is such a, language of communication, really. And we do need that direct communication. I mean, the best thing we could do is something what we're doing now. This is how the Christmas, traditional Christmas, lunch with my daughter, Susan, and I, we had to have it on Zoom. Yeah. That is crazy, and New Year's, all on the phone, Zoom, whatever, it's very unusual. I mean, we're all experiencing the same, well, different countries in different ways, but basically it's a very strange, normally, if there is a disaster, so we all sort of gather up and we help. Now we cannot really see each other. We can only do it otherwise. And that's why I thought maybe it would be a good idea to share some of the experiences. And interestingly enough, for musicians also, for somebody like me, not being able to travel, that was a big adjustment. Because I was supposed to have, non-stop travel, which I have had for many, many decades already. And that to change that into being, a homebody, that was a big adjustment. Yeah. That was a big adjustment. Now, there is another question which takes us to a different part, much closer to you. What are the biggest misconceptions people have about collaborative piano and playing with other soloists?
Ooh, how long have you got? What are the biggest misconceptions? Well, let me just see that I'm answering the question right. So just read that out again, Dima, please.
Yes. What are the biggest misconceptions people have about collaborative piano and playing with other soloists? And I could combine, if it makes it easier for you, there's another similar a question to you. Are there different skills or sensitivities needed when playing with singers as opposed to instrumentalists? That sort of narrows it.
Well, let's work backwards from that one.
Yeah,
That's an eternal one and a very good one.
exactly.
Well, there are differences and there are also many similarities. The similarities, the main similarity is that it's all, in the end, chamber music. That you're working with one or more colleague, you're sharing the stage, you're sharing a piece of music, you listen to one another, you exchange musical ideas. Ideally, you're exchanging them in performance. You haven't set everything in marble in rehearsal, but that if we're playing together, you throw something at me, maybe you take something a little faster than you did in rehearsal, and I say, oh, well, if that's how we're going to go, let's take a bit of left hand. And so it's a bit like lovemaking, if you like. You're adjusting to a partner in different ways. But the main difference is that there are words involved with a singer, and that you are interpreting a poem as well as a piece of music, and that the poet is in there as part of the equation. And the language that the singer is singing in, the content of what he or she is singing makes a difference. The type of voice they have makes a difference. The range of the voice. These are all variables that you have to adjust to. And that's part of the challenge and part of the fun. But in a way that there are parallels with that too. If you're playing for a cellist, you have to be aware of what the weaker part of their register is. If they're playing on their G string, that's usually rather muted, and you have to just go a little cautious there because you'll undoubtedly be playing at a higher pitch. Well, that's not so different from a baritone being in some part of their voice. Whereas if you are singing at the top of your instrument, you're making a lot of noise, and I'm very unlikely to drown you. Same if I'm playing for your daughter Julia, who's got magnificent high notes. I would have to be playing awfully loud to cause any balance issues. Yeah. So it swings and roundabouts. And I have to say that there are specific skills in vocal. I'm trying not to use the word accompaniment, but it'll slip out every now and then. If you're playing for singers, there are tricks and there are techniques and there are whole areas that you build up through experience. And but there are many pianists who are renowned as solo pianists who play this repertoire magnificently, and I would be the first to lift my cap off to them too. I don't believe that they're Venn diagrams that have to be separate. I think interaction between these forms of music making is extremely healthy for all concerned.
Absolutely, and I think in the last maybe 3-4 decades, it's been a lot more of those examples, because in my time, when I was growing up, in the 60s in Moscow, which was, a great center of still fantastic musicians, at their prime, but very few would do a song cycle with a singer unless you were married to one. Rostropovich, of course, was a great exception.
And by memory.
And from memory, which was quite extraordinary. But of course, we most people in the West don't know that he, parallel to his cello study, he only had 3 disciplines that he graduated from Moscow Conservatory. Only 3. Cello, of course, we know. Piano. He actually played either 2nd or 3rd Rachmaninoff concerto on his graduation. So he really, and composition, where he studied with Shostakovich. That's all. Other than that, he was just, he had nothing to do. So he actually was there. And of course, his recitals with Vishnevskaya were just sensational.
I heard one of them. Yep. Unforgettable.
Yeah, really. These days, it's not so uncommon. Now you have big name soloists playing, or conductors who are also pianists. Of course, Tony Pappano plays often with singers, but that's what he always done. From the age of 10, probably even younger, he was playing for his father's lessons. But even the ones who did not necessarily, like I just dug up, because I had the time, an old recording of my mother playing for Nikolai Gedda.
Oh, wow.
You know, they did a full recital at my festival in '85 in Finland. And two of those songs I found, and they were just sensational. Of course, Russian repertoire, Tchaikovsky, Romances. But the thing is, even now at the age of 92, my mother, who never really gave, she only gave 2 recitals there because I asked her. Well, it was pretty good company, Nikolai Gedda and Elizabeth Söderström. I will never forget how Söderström, when I came backstage, because I was the director of the festival, and I said, "Oh, I just wanted to." Oh, so you think I'm nervous? He said, "I'm panicky. I keep telling you're a grandmother. You're a grandmother." You know, she was so, and then she sang magnificently, of course, with her. So, you know, but my mother knew, of course. You mentioned the words. She knew all those romances, every word she knew. So that helps, of course. And that's when one plays, of course. Yeah. Somebody mentioned, because you somebody wanted to know what tricks you need. Some of the tricks that you have, because you mentioned some tricks, and they want to follow up on that.
Maybe tricks is the wrong word.
Okay.
Well, they just become, tricks. Tricks makes it sound as if it's, you know, like
yeah.
But I think there are things that you teach people in this repertoire. Consonants. If you're playing in German or English, if you're playing German and English repertoire, the time taken by consonants is longer than if you're playing in French or Italian, for example. So you have to listen in a slightly different way, and you have to anticipate in a slightly different way. But that, and experience helps with all of that. You need an awareness of singer's breath. You need to build up a kind of instinct for that, a second sense, so that if a singer is not feeling particularly well in the day of a performance, or is having any personal issues, they might be a little shorter of breath. Or if they've had to go up or come down many flights of stairs to get onto the platform, whatever reason, you need just to be aware that they might be breathing in different places, and that's their right. Just little things which build up, and where experience helps, and where you just built up a kind of bank of a sense of how singers think and how they work and how they might react on a platform. And I think what's very important is to be in sympathy with that, including the fact that singers face their audiences. I never face an audience. I'm always at 90 degrees, and thank God. And thank God they don't see me with my terrible I have terrible jaw movements. So thank God no one has to look at that, apart from the poor singer if they look in my direction. But singers have to engage with that in a very real way, and not be distracted by that, and not be distracted by people yawning or reading their program, or
these days looking at their phones.
Oh, God forbid! Kind of awful, horrendous. So it's there's a lot of little things like that. I really believe that this is also a reason why people like to share the platform with their friends, or with people that they feel in harmony, because you're essentially, I don't want to over dramatize this, but you are kind of going into battle together. The audience is not your enemy for a second. On the they are your friends, but you're stepping up together, and you have to feel that you're pointing in the same direction.
Oh, there's no question that once you get into that, you could be chatting backstage, and exchanging jokes, whatever. But once you're there, and the performance starts from that first moment when you're seen by the audience, that's already you enter the stage. The energy and the concentration, the timing, is all over. It's made of a different material.
Your wife just passed you a note saying, "Get rid of that terrible Scottish pianist."
No. She delivers also something that I need to keep in mind. I I get a lot of that, especially now. Now let me go to another one. You have worn many hats throughout your amazing career: pianist, teacher, presenter, director. Can you tell us a bit about your journey through these different aspects and what challenges, rewards they give you?
Ooh, how long have you got? Well,
As long as you have.
actually, how I got into broadcasting is quite interesting because it was entirely luck. Because I did television before I did radio, which is usually the other way around. And the only reason I got into television was that a woman that I'd been at university with was in charge at the time of music in Cardiff, in BBC Wales. And within her empire came Cardiff Singer of the World competition. And she rang me up and said, look, we think you might be good as a presenter. Come and have a chat with us. We had a conversation. And I said, well, I'm rather apprehensive. I've never done anything like this before. And she said, oh, don't worry. We'll train you. We'll give you you'll get your earpiece and we'll give you lots of training and how to do it and lots of dummy runs and tryouts. Don't worry. I think you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So I rang up my mother, always the best thing for any boy to do when confronted with a career choice. I rang up my mother and she said, well, you've always been a bullshitter. So if someone's prepared to pay you for it, I would go for it. So with that vote of confidence in mind, I went down to Cardiff and they stuck the thing, and they were very, very nice. The people there were and are lovely. They stuck a piece in my ear and said, okay, you've got your first piece of camera. Don't forget to smile. Cue Iain. And that was my training. It was off you go. But actually, that was great fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. And then Radio 3 got in touch after that. I managed not to make a complete idiot of myself on the television, and then Radio 3 got in touch, and that started a longer relationship there.
That's a baptism by fire, but it worked out. And
it worked out. I think one of the things I've learned, now that I'm old and bald, one of the things I have learned about myself is that I am a natural, as we say, portfolio person. I'm happiest when I'm doing several different things. And that's a good lesson to learn. But another lesson to learn to temper that is beware of being a part-time pianist, because the piano is a very jealous mistress. And if you get too distracted by other things and other demands, then God help you when you get up on that stage, because there's nowhere to hide. So I've had to tune the radio backwards and forwards, literally and metaphorically a bit, to find what I think is the right balance. Because as soon as you're involved with anything, with organizations or groups of people, someone will always be ringing you up and saying, oh, can we have a meeting on Tuesday? Oh, I need to talk to you. Can you do this? Here's your deadline, do that. Nobody rings you up and says, have you practiced today? And so that's the big danger, because, you know, I needn't tell you this, Dima, but, you know, every instrumentalist, let's not confine it to piano. Piano's particularly acute for this, but every instrumentalist has a little person on their shoulder inducing guilt, saying, have you practiced enough? When did you last play a scale? And that you have to respect that little man on your shoulder and listen to him, because if you don't, then it doesn't end in a good place.
Not at all. And we all been on that side of the fence, you know, because very often, you know, no matter how minimal one's maintenance, because we all have different, you know, we build differently. Some people need, 6 hours a day, otherwise they don't feel that they've done. Others need 1 hour. But as long as you have that 1 hour and you really practice and you really concentrate, if you don't, there is this worry inside of you. That little man that you're talking about said, you haven't really done your homework. You haven't practiced enough. And that could shatter your confidence, which normally should be, and if you did practice and you've done it, even if something goes wrong, you still know that you've been preparing so seriously. There is a follow-up. Again, we have, did you like the improvisational aspect of TV and radio?
Sure, I love everything where I don't have to practice.
When you have to.
And it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier talking about music than playing it. I can tell you that too. I
Yeah,
mean, again, not to belittle that there's skills involved in there too, and also to take that
of course.
seriously. But you know, I love being able to use the musical background and the musical knowledge and experience I have, but process it with a different bit of my brain, which means words tumbling out of my mouth. Yeah. And also, I think what's interesting in terms of, to be a little more serious about it, I think performers often can make good presenters because we're also used to adrenaline and to, if we feel a bit nervous, we don't necessarily panic. We know that that's part of the deal that we can get through, and how to try and channel that as a positive energy source rather than think, oh my God.
Yeah.
So when the red light goes on, you don't wet your pants.
You don't freeze. You actually open up and you become bigger,
That's
which very often, the case when they come up to you afterwards. Oh, but you seem so much bigger, because we do get bigger on stage. There's a funny comment that once I started to conduct, speaking of facing the audience and not a very, very well-known conductor I should not name, who he said, why would you do this? I said, what do you mean? There's so much repertoire. It's so exciting. He said, yeah, but you're so lucky. You stand with your back to the musicians. You don't have to see their faces. Now, when you turn back, you see what they really look like while they. So there is a different perspective from the conductors. You don't have to see their faces. It's not always the case, but we do need. We have this advantage and disadvantage of seeing, while you're a soloist, of seeing what the audience does. And once you spot somebody that it's a big misconception when they think that we don't notice anything. No, if anything, our senses are heightened, and we notice details that normally we wouldn't. So, sometimes you see your friend, who's supposed to be listening to your Beethoven concerto and just intensely looking at the phone, and you think, my God, not now, not you, not now.
But they could be looking at the score on their phone. You don't know that either.
I confronted my very, very good friend, and I said, why do you, during the most gorgeous second movement, said, I wanted to know when it was written, who knows, I hope she's right. I choose to believe her, but it's still wrong to me, It's not that she has to stare at me, but at least be away from all the technology. There's something you mentioned, and which moves me to one of the questions here, because you mentioned portfolio, and one of the questions was exactly that: is it necessary nowadays, especially during these times, to have what they call a portfolio career?
Well, it's certainly a help in these times. These times have defined the wisdom of having a portfolio career, because another way of putting that is that you've got plans B, C, and D. And even if they don't contribute enormously to your bank balance, they're giving you something, and they're keeping you sane. And, to be honest, in the last 9 months, just to have a reason to get up in the morning sometimes is a positive thing. And so I would answer that enthusiastically, yes. And also, some people are more temperamentally suited to it than others. I mean, even if I had all the skills and equipment to have a concerto career, I don't think it would have made me happy ever. I mean, I think going around, I look at my friend Stephen Huff, for example, and you look at the number of concertos that he has to have in his fingers, and the range that he has to play. I just have to have a lie down even thinking about that. And I would not enjoy, even if I had his God-given gifts and his application, it wouldn't make me a happy bunny. And that's me. Other people, fine. But I've had, earlier in my career, I did have years where I really did nothing but recitals all year long, and it didn't make me happy. Coming down and just sitting down automatically at the piano first thing, going right through, it just didn't really suit me. And so for me, finding a balance has been very important. And I think I think now even more for the young artists coming out, I think finding the right balance is not as simple as you might think, and it might need a different way of thinking, because there's a lot to be said for some of that portfolio not necessarily being musically connected. You know, I remember reading that T.S. Eliot famously said, advice to young writers or young poets: earn your money some other way, not connected with poetry. Keep that separate. And you know, I think that of course there's no formula that fits everybody, but don't think, I mean, advice to the young, don't think that if part of your life is spent doing that and earning money in a certain way, that you're failing in your artistic endeavor. On the contrary, you're enabling your artistic endeavor, and you're maybe keeping yourself clean for that. I mean, I think also if you do a lot of teaching, it's very difficult if you're teaching piano, voice, violin, tuba, whatever it is. It's very difficult to do hours and hours of that, give that your full attention and focus, and then go home and practice. I cannot do that. My head's too full of music. I have to have a gin and tonic and watch rubbish on television. I cannot sit down and practice fresh, or I achieve nothing. So different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely, but I think it somehow this pandemic, what it brought into focus is how much it means to us a lot more than just ways of earning a living.
Yeah.
You know, we became the real amateurs with a capital A, which amateur, which means the root of the word is that you love doing that. And I remember years ago, I heard the most shocking comment coming from a concertmaster of a major US orchestra. Said, what do you mean enjoy it? We're professionals. We're not supposed to enjoy it. And, you know, we do come across those people. I hope that experience where we actually have not a chance to even just do the routine thing. I hope that the more routine goes out of our life, the more we become at heart enthusiasts and amateurs, because we love it. We do it not because somebody pays us, because these days where do you get paid? You know, if there's no performances. Go ahead.
If I can also just add a little personal note here, one of the things that has happened in the last few months, the Wigmore Hall, who, as we know, have been marvelous and trailblazing in having streamed performances, sometimes with a little audience and sometimes with an empty hall. I've been one of the team lucky enough to be invited to come and present some of those concerts, which means I turn up in Wigmore Street and I just say a little bit about the pieces in question. And it's not very onerous, and it's lovely, firstly, to be in the hall, and secondly, to interact with colleagues on stage. But I've had amazing audience experience being there, because well, two performances stand out particular, both with string quartets. I fronted two late Beethoven recitals given by the Elias Quartet, and then more recently, a hall completely empty apart from me and the director, John Gilhooly, of another wonderful British quartet called the Heath Quartet, playing 20th and 21st century British music. And with just the two of us, and they played with such intensity, I cannot tell you what a privilege that felt, just being alone in the hall. This is an experience that would never have happened to me had there not been this ghastly pandemic. So you can't always tell where your spiritual nourishment is going to come from, because believe me, particularly with the Beethoven, there was, well, in both concerts, there were spiritual dimensions. And so I was very much the amateur there. And I left onto an empty Wigmore Street, kind of walking on air. I felt elated after all those concerts. They were just fantastic. So what a blessing to have that. I feel very, very fortunate and privileged to have had that opportunity.
For me, it was also very much the same reaction just to a live orchestral playing. When I was in the jury, one of my very few trips in this whole time was in Prague, and I was listening to the last round of the competition. Just the opening of this, just the you know, the hair just stands on that, because you experience something that you've been part of day in, day out, and all of a sudden 6 months, none of that.
Yeah.
And then you feel it with every ounce of your body. You just the excitement and the great visceral response, and that's what we've been missing, And then finally, when I finally managed to have one live concert with the orchestra I played and also conducted, I mean, it was just like finally breathing the oxygen. Now let me go on with these questions. I mean, we could, of course, speaking of the young ones, and of course you have them. This is one question: what is the best way for the young performers to be heard and noticed today? Is it still competitions, auditions, or now more online material like website, YouTube, etc.? That's difficult.
Well, if I knew the answer to that question, Dima, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another element of my portfolio. I would be very hesitant to presume to give an answer to that, because again, I think everyone has to find their own way through. Here we are in a social media event, and there are great positives to social media, but there are also great dangers, and I think it has to be handled with extreme care. I mean, certainly young artists have to be aware of it and use it for good, for their own good, in a quite cynical, calculating way. But I think it can be a very depressing influence on people's lives, or it can give the illusion that other people are living some kind of enchanted existence that they're denied. So I think you have to be very, very careful with it. It's like nuclear power. It can be used in positive and negative ways. Competitions, I think, I'm rather ambivalent about competitions, because I think they can be forces for good. And again, I think you can use them to your own ends, but you have to be very, very careful in your thinking and not feel, try them, win some money, win some acclaim, but don't feel that they mean too much artistically, or if you get kicked out in the first round, don't think you're a failure. I mean, I did some piano competitions. I never got through the first round of any of them, and I hated the whole experience. I was the wrong sort of player for them, and I'm very glad I didn't go and jump off a bridge, because there's other forms of music making available. And the main thing is to dust yourself down and continue on your path. So I some combination of all of the above is the thing. I mean, auditions is an interesting one, because in my world, I don't get to audition. I'm surrounded by singers who spend their lives complaining about auditions and how awful auditions are. I would love to audition on a level playing field for certain performing opportunities. And I think singers in particular, be wary of bitching about auditions, because they're a way of being heard, and use them again with a certain degree of healthy cynicism for what they are. And the more you're heard at a certain point in your emerging career, the better. And you never know, speaking as someone who spends a bit of their time on the other side of the table, you never know necessarily what the criteria are. If it's an audition for a particular operatic role, that's not a singing competition. It doesn't mean that the best person gets the part. It could be that the tenor is 2'3". You just don't know. Or it could be that the director has already decided who they want. You don't know what the agenda is. And also, as you and I both know from being on competition juries, there are as many opinions as there are jurors. And even before you enter into any discussion of murky business, the fact is everyone likes different things. And what you think is objectively quantifiable as something good versus something bad, the person next to you hears it differently. So what does it all mean? You've got to take
at the same time, I agree with everything you said. At the same time, there's so few possibilities, especially for just instrumentalists, for instance, not just the singers, because singers really, in any case, competition is sort of like a decathlon. event. You
Yeah,
have to throw the javelin, you have to run the distance, and all together. But the concert life is far from it.
that's right.
They want you for a specific
That's true.
role or for a specific concerto, and that
Yeah.
has nothing to do. You could be fabulous in high jump, and absolutely useless in 100-meter dash. And the same
But you're only
could,
good for one thing. That's true.
that's it. And
Very,
at least you open the doors with that one thing.
yeah.
Then maybe you can develop, and maybe they could try you in something else. But competition sort of evens out. At the same time, I I've been to many competition juries, and also I did my competitions earlier on. It does put you sort of, it's your choice. You have to know how to handle nerves,
Yeah.
and you have to know how to just have that tunnel vision. You just go there, you're not affected, you're not actually competing against anyone except yourself. But you need to rein in your nerves and do your best, which is similar to any kind of live event, and a concert. So there is something that could be
Oh,
learned.
no, there are a lot of positives. And
Yeah,
also, just having that amount of repertoire, the decathlon repertoire prepared and ready, that is a very good thing to have all that under your belt and ready to go.
yeah, absolutely. And the more, I mean, especially now, uh, you know, a lot of concerts are happening in those countries where it's still happening, like Japan, like Taiwan and everything, Far East usually, but also in Scandinavia, for instance. There've been a lot of concerts with different soloists, with different conductors, because they couldn't get there. They
Yeah.
couldn't, play, or they were afraid to go, and this and that. Russia said, yeah. So a lot of young people jumped in and did that.
And then they get a
For
start.
this, you need to be
You have to
ready
have it ready.
at the
Yeah.
drop of a hat, and that is a special skill. I'm just reading here. There's another probably follow up during the past pandemic year. Have either of you participated in a professional collaboration that you feel would otherwise, without the pandemic situation, have never happened? That's interesting.
Um, I think the honest answer to that is no from me. I mean, I was able to do some recording projects.
Yeah,
I made 3 CDs because that's a very socially distanced activity, and
exactly.
and canny record companies were very aware that it was a good chance to have projects which might have been discussed, that they could actually action them. But there are all projects which had been in discussion, so I wouldn't say that that was out of the blue. No, I'm wrong, because actually I did a recital in the first month. The Wigmore Hall did their first month of streamed empty hall recitals in, I think, June, and I was fortunate to do one of those. That wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Otherwise, yeah.
And I did that with my Irish colleague Eilish Tynan, and that was a wonderful thing to do. And
I know.
that got a lot of attention from all over the world, and it was a very joyous thing to do, and I'm very grateful for that. How about you, Dima? Did you have anything?
Oh no, I've learned a lot of new skills which I didn't have before. It's not that necessarily I've collaborated with people I never knew, but I've managed somehow to completely turn around and revive my chamber orchestra, which is based everywhere, from Seattle, to New York, to London, Paris, and Moscow, and so forth, all over Europe, the NAS Chamber Orchestra. And we've been doing distant videos, which we got better and better at, and extremely complicated stuff. But it's fascinating how now I have a small army of my sort of musical family that I, just before our talk, I mean, I get all kinds of, we have a page, and that's where I send the music, and the preparation is incredibly detailed and everything. And then somebody has to put it all together. You play with a so-called click track and all that. But I mean, the audience, you would think, oh, who would listen to it. No, you'd be surprised. Over 200,000 views we've had just on my Facebook page, plus other things. So there is something that, which is, there's no guarantee that all these 200,000 listen to everything from the beginning to the end, but usually you do shorter pieces, you know, so you do between 2 and 3 minutes. And if you manage to get a piece of music that has sort of several shorter movements, and preferably not with too much rubato, you know, with not too much freedom. Of course, I mean, there are limitations, but all of that, if you told me at the beginning of March that I would be doing that, I would absolutely, you know, not in my wildest dreams. But necessity is the mother of invention, you know. Or what's the alternative? Do nothing and be depressed and not getting up in the morning. You know, also my, you know, long time, you know, pastime, the transcriptions. I've done more transcriptions than I think ever, because, you know, I'm home and I've got the time. So this is no, I think it has been wonderful. And also I was asked to do another series of interviews for my orchestra. I mean, most of the soloists that were supposed to come to Greensboro this year, all they got was a Zoom chat with me, and then the program that at least we talked about music. You know, we talked about the upcoming concert, and then it would be moving away from us. You know, but there's still a lot of them are scheduled for next season, maybe still at the end of this season. I mean, everything's upside down these days. Now, let me take you to a completely different direction, which could be fun. I know that it would be, but whoever asked it maybe didn't. The TV series, and you and I, of course, we watched a lot of TV. We've exchanged the suggestions there, but this is very special. The TV series Queen's Gambit proved to be very popular last year and boosted chess popularity in many countries, especially USA. Do you play chess? And if you do, what are your thoughts on that phenomenon?
Oh, yes. Well, I do play chess. I played chess very seriously when I was a schoolboy. Well, very seriously, not very seriously, but I played played for my school and all that, and we went and played other schools, and yeah, and I have also revived my interest in that, not by playing online, but by following various online websites in lockdown, because I found that very good brain gym, as the saying now goes. And I have just caught up with the Queen. I've just watched that, actually. So yeah, it's been very interesting. And one of the things I liked about it was the way they showed how how seriously it was taken in the old USSR, and this her coming out every day, a bigger crowd. I love that, and it's very like Tchaikovsky competition. I mean, in the same way that would never happen here. That would never happen in America. And actually, I sat in once, and I was on holiday in Croatia once, and just by chance I was in Zagreb, and there was a big chess competition going on with major players, and I went for a couple of days. It was incredibly exciting. Everyone thinks chess moves at a snail's pace, and of course sometimes it does. That was one of the things they got wrong. Of course, they had to show everyone seemed to move very quickly in the telly thing.
Doesn't
that's part of that's just you have to do that for the drama. But you know, being in a crowd and the big screen and everything, and a move would be made, and people go gasp. It was very, very exciting. You have to be into it, and you have to buy into it. But no, I think it's very good, and I know that in Armenia, for example, it's a compulsory school subject. I think that's fantastic. I think it's a great thing for kids to learn. You can't start too young. And it's a very good thing for the spatial awareness and strategic thinking.
Also strategy and thinking ahead, thinking, you know, 3, 4, sometimes some of those guys, of course, can think 10 moves ahead. Also studying, you know, the openings and the middle spell, the middle, and then the ending. And it's sort of a game of life. You know, you sort of live the whole miniature life from the beginning to the end. It depends. If you make the wrong move, it could take you to completely
pure skill.
Yeah. But it's fascinating. You did notice how because we heard an interview with, you know, uh, with the guy who wrote the script. I think he's directed it. I forget his name, but he said it probably the first time a Western sort of big budget a TV series showed the old Soviet Union in a positive light, because there was this camaraderie. They all helped each other. All these great players, they all got together and allies. In those days, they used to adjourn the games, which of course a big episode there in Moscow. And it was absolutely true. These boulevards and the amateurs playing and everything. And that was the atmosphere I grew up with, and I knew a lot of great chess players.
But I'll tell you another advantage of the Soviet system. I mean, I studied, maybe this isn't generally known, but I spent 2 years in Warsaw, studying piano in Poland, before the Iron Curtain came down in the early 80s. And one thing that struck me there, I mean, there were many disadvantages. And of course, seeing the communists, no one wants to live under communism. Let's agree on that. However, music is one of the areas in which, if you compare the system, if you have a musical child, if you're working on minimum wage here in the UK at the moment, and you have a child who wants violin lessons, good luck. Good luck finding them a violin, a bow, a case, and paying for lessons. It's not going to happen. In Poland at that time, if a child showed aptitude or talent, it didn't matter what mommy and daddy did. They would find a violin. Even if it was a crappy violin, they'd find a violin for them, and that child would have a basis to work on. So that, to me, was not nothing. And I saw that the musical education system had definite positives compared to ours, which is a middle and upper middle class game. And I've never forgotten. Do you agree?
Oh, totally. Of course, I totally agree, because I saw, talents coming from all over Russia, from all kinds of background, and along with so-called the dynasties, the sons, the grandsons, of famous musicians, there were people who come from completely, the background they could never afford. Once they show talent locally, and then if they exceed that level, they would be sent to Moscow to that incredible school, Central Music School, put in dormitory, everything paid for, never once sent for education, everything provided, the violins, the bows, the school clothes, everything. You literally had the advantage of the system, and you could make it all the way up if you were that good, and if you practice, of course, and then of course the peer pressure and everything. That was a fantastic system. And many came from the background. There was no way, in the States or here, they would have a chance, And when they came to competitions, of course, I remember some American participants. I mean, they had to raise the money for the trip, to go to European competition, to Queen Elizabeth, or to the Tchaikovsky competition. Now Tchaikovsky competition actually pays for the ones that they've selected. But the Russian teams, they had months of preparation, months of concerts where they. So when they came in, I mean, there was no. It's like with the chess players, they were so much better prepared, because the government, of course, there is definitely a political side to it. They didn't just represent themselves; they represented the workers' paradise. They represented the system.
Well, it was very like athletes, very similar to the whole athletic thing.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. But it's interesting how this whole thing now changes the perspective. One remembers also the school years and all that. There is something else. There's an interesting question which only you could answer, because I have no experience in that. It says, you have participated in putting on some shows in prisons. Could you tell us about these experiences?
Oh, yes. Well, this is going back a little now, but I have indeed. I've been involved for many years with what is now Grange Park Opera.
right?
which incorporates something called Pimlico Opera, which started several decades ago. It was started by the same founder, Wasfikani, who's just been awarded a CBE. And Pimlico Opera now devotes its time to performances in prison, mixing professional soloists with a chorus made up of serving prisoners, often in the past in male prisons, but more recently, several times in women's prisons, which is a very interesting contrast in atmosphere. So early on, I was involved in the musical preparation for Guys and Dolls, West Side Story, and Sweeney Todd, which was a considerable investment of time, but it's an extraordinary experience, and I feel really privileged to have done it because it just confounds so many expectations that you go in with, and I cannot recommend these performances too strongly. If anyone's interested, I mean, there's not one happening at the moment, obviously, because of all the trouble. But if in a year or 18 months' time, do keep your eyes open for it, because as members of the public, you can go, you can buy tickets, and you have to be screened, and you have to go in without mobiles, and there's a whole palaver. Have you ever been to one, Dima? I don't remember. Have you?
No,
been
but
to
I saw some of it in you know, when they had a program on television about it, but I've never actually been. I've been Go ahead.
Oh well, I was, you know, people, the responses of people seeing them have been absolutely extraordinary, and also a lot of the prisoners that end up taking part don't really know what they're getting themselves in for. They want to do it because pretty girls are involved, and it's something different, and it's a change in routine, and they end up often the musical demands are much greater than you might think them able of taking on. I mean, let me just tell you, Sweeney Todd, the chorus parts are not easy at all, and so you're standing in front of these blokes who've never sung anything ever in their lives, and you're trying to get them to sing in different parts and learn different pitches. But so long as you don't tell them it's difficult, they come with essentially open minds. But the responses from some of these people and also from their families has been just heartbreaking. And so, because they feel that a lot of them have never had a chance to show anything, not just in terms of performance, but just of people believing in them, or believing that they have the power of good within them and the power to create something. And after one performance, after one project, there's usually some kind of washing up time when everything has to be taken out of the prison and sets dismantled and everything. There's a kind of letdown time. And Wasfikani one day rang me up on the phone to read out a letter she'd received from the mother of a 19, 20-year-old boy who'd been in that project. And after about 2 sentences, I was in tears. It was so touching about how no one had ever believed in this boy.
So ultimately, on the human level, that means so much more than
unbelievable. And and also, without getting too sanctimonious about it, music has a power, and these shows are very beautifully crafted. And there's something, you know, there's a band in there. They're very good musicians, very good freelance pickup band, and these inmates are performing something of real musical quality there. It's not some chucked together thing. They spend months rehearsing it, and they come up with a product that everyone can be proud of, that again defies all expectations. Partly also because they're pulled up by the professionals, because we take in very good soloists. And I'll also never forget, there was a bunch of really tough guys when we were doing West Side Story. They first meet the principals that come pros, and the guy singing Tony was this little Italian American guy, appropriately. And we said we were finishing the rehearsal, and it had all been about the chorus, and these other guys hadn't done very much. And I just said to this guy at the end, we were winding up, and I said to him, why don't you should we just sing tonight? Just give them a flavor of that. And he says, oh yeah, sure. So he goes, tonight, tonight. We go through this, and at the end he goes, tonight. And he does this big Topsy or whatever it was. And these guys have never heard an operatic voice, ever. They've never been to the opera. They don't know about that kind of singing. But you talk about the decathlon, they recognize something physical, something in your face. And just that sound in a contained space, this tenor unleashing the beast, that changed the atmosphere because they thought, whoa, we can't do that. And so windows open. And yeah, no, it's a great thing. It's a great thing that they do there. And I cannot commend it too strongly.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful story. And also, we are certainly, we cannot compare our conditions to any kind of prison, but for practical reason, we have been, in a way, the only time I can compare to this amount of time not being able to perform or to get on with my normal life is the year and a half that I had before I left Russia and came to the States. So the immigration time was even longer than now, a year and a half. But that was also because of the circumstances, and I had to convince the authorities that they lost me as a violinist, that I could no longer play. So there was an enforced. Yeah, and I just canceled all the concerts. I said I couldn't go to the competition, and then I couldn't play anymore. So all my concerts, I disappeared. So I became a non-performer. Not until I got to New York, got accepted at Juilliard, won the competition there, and finally played a concert there. It was a gap of a year and a half. And at the age of your early 20s, between 22 and 23, that's a long time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, but therefore, of course, it's easier for somebody like me who has experienced something like that. But I think for the young ones, it has been, in a way, similar to prison environment, because you're not allowed to even come out and see other people. But I think what you've said and what you've described, I think, is very encouraging and uplifting. And really, it's let me see if there's anything of interest in the question. But you've shared a great deal, and I really thank you for it, because it's very heartwarming. And for an old dog like me, I'm sure for the young ones, it must be even more. Yes, so I think we've covered. It's interesting, just the last thing. Do you agree, because you are part of a college, you're a professor at Guildhall, because I had a talk last month with Tony Papanon, and he never went to college. And he voiced an opinion that, which I tend to agree, having gone to colleges, that the music colleges create a certain bubble, which is sometimes pretty far from the real life. Do you agree with that? I mean, that there are some people that I've witnessed this, that they're so comfortable within the college, especially big American universities or places like Moscow Conservatory or Juilliard and this and that, even though it's in the big cities, but still it sort of has a dynamic of its own, and you think the life is similar to that, where in fact life could be quite different.
That's certainly a danger. I think it's a danger that colleges are aware of and try and counteract. Some of it's inevitable. I think, I certainly think, I try to encourage students, for example, if they've done an undergraduate at the Guildhall or at whatever the college is, I would always encourage them to maybe look elsewhere to do postgrad, or vice versa. I think it's good to move around. I think it's good not to get stuck in the same building. You can become rather institutionalized. And I think, of course, some people become stars there and get a sense of entitlement, which can actually hold them back. Because, we all develop at different stages, and we all know the story of the tortoise and the hare. and people develop at their own time, and all sorts of things influence that. But at the same time, music schools can be of tremendous value too, because they can give you a sense of community. You have to, we live in a competitive world, and you have to have some sense of where you fit in with your peers, even temporarily. At the same time, not thinking it's forever or that it defines you, but you can learn a lot from your peers. A lot of performance classes. I do some of these different projects where people are collaborating in different ways, and it just gives them a sense of sort of noodling along with one another. I think that's a good thing.
Definitely.
I think
socially, you need to communicate. You need,
socially,
exactly.
and you know, what we do is a kind of rarefied, specialized thing. And I came from a background in Scotland. I came from a school that was very academically strong, but totally despised all creative arts, really, or certainly music. I was never encouraged for a moment. And so to be at a college or a university where you are in a bubble, but you're surrounded by people who love and are pursuing this crazy thing, which everyone in your hometown thought you were mad for wanting to do. Well, you know, that's got a value too. So the music colleges are easy to take pot shots at, and plenty do. And, you know, take them away. And I mean, they're fighting for their lives at the moment with the pandemic and also with Brexit. Brexit has been catastrophically bad for the music colleges, because the Europeans now will have to pay massive foreign student fees. So we're looking down the barrels of many guns here, and let's hope that all the colleges we have survive. I also, by the way, am a great believer in the virtues of the non-London colleges. I think it's often very good for people to study in Glasgow or Cardiff, Manchester, Birmingham. They all have excellent places, and London is such a nightmare for the young and impoverished. If you've got lots of money in your pocket, you'll have a great time as a student in London. But it is a tough place to be as a student, and expensive as hell. And, you know, Glasgow, my native city, is a lovely place to be. Great student town. So is Cardiff, so is Birmingham, so is Manchester. So anyway, that's my little speech.
Great. I think it's wonderful to have your perspective on all of that. Iain, thanks so much. I mean, it's been a great pleasure to have you, and I'm sure those stories and opinions and impressions have been so valuable for everyone who not only heard this now, but also it'll be posted, and I'm really looking forward to our little project that we're not going to tell, but we do have a project going on while in this non-direct communication. We have something up our sleeves, but for that, next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.